Duplicate content issues is another big problem, and this is where it's not so cut and dry. There's a lot of gray area here, right? So the problem obviously is that search engines don't want to show the same resource every time for a given query, even if that resource happens to exist on different domains, right? So that's really common as it relates to product descriptions, as it relates to articles that you're syndicating, these kinds of things. And search engines, for the most part, use link connectivity and page rank and date of discovery as primary indicators of which document it's going to choose as the original source. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the solutions part of this slide. But they basically strip away the boilerplate elements and they do what's called a shingle test for word sets in order to determine whether something is duplicate content or not. So unfortunately, what that means is that there's no finite measure where I can say to you, this is going to be duplicate content because it doesn't have X amount of words that are not the same, etc. Right? It's sort of a gray area, and really, depending on the niche that you're in and the type of site that you're in, that threshold might vary depending on if you're in a niche that has a greater page mutation rate. So, for example, if you're a publisher, you might be affected a little bit less by duplicate content issues than if you're just a normal static website. But again, that's all kind of a gray area, and it's really hard to navigate. So we have some general rules that we go by, and the first being that, again, we talked about this last time, that your content on your own website is only reachable through one unique URL. Because you can have duplicate content issues with other people that are using your content. You can have duplicate content issues with yourself. So a lot of times what I see, especially as it relates to content management systems, you'll find that breadcrumb navigation sometimes is problematic, because what happens is that you have product categories, or products, that exist in multiple product categories. And so because of that, you have a situation where, depending on how the user navigates down to that product, the breadcrumb navigation is going to change, and some content management systems change the URL based on that navigation. So then you get multiple URLs going to the same product, so that becomes problematic. There are a number of different things that can occur, and the list is too extensive to cover in here. But it's just something to be aware of and try to work out with your IT team. Is you really want to have that one unique landing spot for each piece of content. The other we talked about is the canonicalization. So again, domain, www.domain.com, also domain.com/index.html. Again, I was doing a lab earlier, and someone had their www.domain.com. They had www.domain.com/index.cfm, and that was in their homepage logo. And then in their breadcrumb navigation, they had index.html. So there's 3 versions of the homepage there. They're all getting page rank. 2 of them are just taking that page rank and throwing it into the netherworld. You're never going to see it again, and you're not consolidating all your inherent values at that point. So that's one of the issues with duplicate content. You want to make sure, again, that you're consistent with your folder versus file names. So that happens a lot with IT teams that don't have a set structure in place. If I were you, I would choose the folder rather than the file name. So that way, if you ever change your back-end platform, you don't have to recode. Right? If you go from HTML to CFM or to PHP or to whatever you're doing, if you always link to the folders, you're always going to be fine. You're never going to have to worry about that. If you syndicate articles or content, helpful to link back to the original piece. That's one of the things that the engines use in making that determination. Even more helpful if your content is unique and what you syndicate is different. Ever so slightly, but still. You can let everyone who's syndicating your content fight it out to see who's going to have that listing for that particular article, and then you've got your content, and then you don't have to worry about it in that situation. Obviously, that's very resource intensive. It requires you to have a culture in place that understands that, and makes the necessary sacrifices in order to produce 2 pieces of content every time you want to do something like that. So it may or may not be feasible for you depending on your business model. One of the things that you can do is use copyscape.com to look for potential duplicate content issues, as well as trademark infringement issues. So that's a very good resource if you haven't checked that out. And again, we can take more questions about duplicate content during the Q&A period if anyone has those questions. So that's really all I wanted to cover today from a site-wide perspective. Again, there's a lot that goes into site-wide beyond what we talked about today, all the little subtle nuances of SEO, you know, if it's the no ODP tag or REL equals no follow stuff, or, you know, there's a lot of little things that go into that, but I really wanted to cover today kind of the basics and also highlight some of the stuff that you should be doing on an ongoing basis. Thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate everyone's attention.